What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today, as he does from across the pond, my podcasting cousin, the captain of the Taylor gang, the one and only Adam Taylor. What's up, Adam?
Yo, what's going on, man? It's been a hot minute. We did a couple of back-to-back episodes last week, and then I just vanished for a hot minute, man. What's going on?
Hey, it's all good, man. That's why we got the three-man weave. You always got to fill your slot in the three-man weave. You got to make sure you're hitting all the right angles. So we got you covered here. That is one of the beauties here. But, right now we're recording this here on Friday morning U.S. time. I know for Adam, sometimes the days get a little bit confused, but U.S. time, Friday morning here, right before Game 3, Celtics Hawks. Celtics lead the series 2-0. Game is in Atlanta tonight, and we're going to talk about that. But there's some big news last night that dropped that we have to lead the podcast with. Malcolm Obama, a.k.a. Barack Brogdon, a.k.a. the president, is your NBA Sixth Man of the Year, wins the award last night, hops on TNT to accept it. Adam, we've got an award winner in our midst here. By the way, made your boy a little scratch here. Your boy's feeling pretty good this morning with the winnings that Malcolm Brogdon put in his pockets. How are you feeling this morning with Malcolm Brogdon taking home some hardware?
Yo, first off, man, what happened to Brobama? You missed that Brobama?
I missed that.
That's my favorite.
I was trying to get on my Chris Vernon shit. I need more AKAs. I need more AKAs. Yeah, but I'll get there one day. I'll get there one day.
Yeah, I'm glad you're feeling flushed though, man. That's a good way to start the weekend. If you got any plans, go out and spend it. If you don't have plans, make some plans. You feel me? On a side note, Monday I go and watch Kevin Hart. I'm really excited for that.
Oh,
yeah, that's gonna be dope. Anyway, back to basketball. So, okay, so look, coming through into the season, everyone knows that I was quite skeptical of the Brogdon edition.
I didn't know if you were gonna go here. I was gonna bring this up, but I'm glad you're addressing.
Yeah, no, like I'll hold my hands up when I'm wrong. I'll soon enough gloat if I'm correct. So I've got to be man enough to be like, no, put that on Hot Takes Exposed. I was very skeptical. There was an injury history attached to it. I was very concerned. You've already got Rob Williams, who's injured, got a big injury history, and I feel like I was justified in my concern, but maybe I didn't look at the upside as much as what I should have initially. Now, obviously, as the season's gone on, I've become a bro lever, a brog lever. I don't know, a Brobama lever. I don't know, a Brobama light. I've become a Brobama light. So I've changed tune. I've changed tone. I think that there was a fair, healthy competition between Brogdon and Quickly for this award. I think that for me, the fact that Brogdon won it means that the NBA and the voters really kept it to the tradition of, hey, this is a bench guy that gave you a huge impact, right? And Quickly was doing that for the Knicks, but he also started a bunch of games because it's the Knicks and they don't have the depth that Boston has. But Brogdon's done everything he was brought in to do. He's provided scoring off the bench, playmaking off the bench. He can change the game. I mean, you only have to look to the first quarter of that Hawks game in game 2 when the Celtics came out flat. Joe Mazzulla goes to Robin Brogdon off the bench, and the entire outlook of the game changes in an instant. Brogdon just gets on the ball, couple of post-entry passes to Rob, a lob pass, and everything's just roses from there on out. And to me, that was really quintessential of what Brogdon's been like for the team this season. Whenever he's come in, he's held it down. Sometimes he's elevated the team. Sometimes he's been a conduit to what's already going on well. But it's been very rare. I'm not going to say it hasn't happened because that would be a lie. It's been very rare where Brogdon's came in and the team looked worse.
Yeah,
right. There's been times.
There's definitely been times. I think he's and this is one of his benefits, right? Is he's a little bit of a different player. So every once in a while, when he comes in, I do feel like sometimes the ball doesn't move in the same way, but sometimes you need that change. If you need that variety, I think when you look at the totality of Brogdon's season, which by the way, to your point, like you weren't entirely wrong with being cautiously, optimistic or hesitant. Before the season, he played 67 games this year. That's the most games he's played since his rookie season. So you weren't wrong as far as injury management, and he's been able to sustain it throughout the year. But I think when you look at Malcolm Brogdon's game and what he's brought to this team throughout the season, and you project why he's such an exciting addition, is he brings an element the Celtics clearly did not have in last year's postseason. And when you look at that Warriors series, not only was everybody tired because there wasn't the depth, Rob was playing hurt, but there just wasn't enough juice offensively. Malcolm Brogdon can bring that juice without having, even if the game is in a place where, things aren't flowing correctly, he can create his own flow. And that's something that we know Jaylen Brown can do. We know Jason Tatum can do. And kind of last year, we were like, after the two of them, if they weren't having it or the defense was scheming so hard against them, and the Warriors obviously were a pretty good matchup for us, or a tough matchup for us, I should say. It was, Marcus, what do you got? It was kind of just looking around the room to say, is this going to be one of those Al nights? Derek wasn't playing the way that Derek White's been playing, who we'll talk about later. And so we kind of ran out of options. Malcolm Brogdon is a guy that, he averaged 14.9 points this year, won Sixth Man of the Year. That's his lowest scoring point total since his second year in the league when he averaged 13 points. This is a guy that traditionally averages 15, 16, has averaged over 20 points per game. It's a brand new element, and the role that he's able to play on this team because of the depth, like you said, allows him to be so much more efficient. And that's why you see him with borderline, 50, 40, 90 numbers. I think he shot 48% he shot 48% from the field, 44 over almost 45% from 3-point land, and then 87% from the free throw line. That's the guy that you're bringing in. Greg and I talked about this on the last podcast with him and Rob Williams, which they totally changed game 2 in that first quarter when they came in. With the two of them coming off the bench, Celtics really have a 7-man starting unit that they're utilizing as bench and role players. That's the depth of this team. And, I think between him and Quickly, I honestly, I think Quickly had a great year. I wouldn't have been able to make a super strong case that I think Brogdon deserved it, definitively over Quickly. And as you saw in the voting, it was relatively close. It wasn't necessarily a runaway, but it was clearly the two of them that were leading the charge. And like you said, I think the traditional that he played every single game off the bench, plus the Celtics being the 2 seed, led him to go ahead and bring home the award.
Yeah, I mean, you're making the biggest impact off the bench for the best team or one of the best teams in the league, right?
Yeah.
I also think that, and this isn't something I'd expect voters to look at, but I also believe that Brogdon's presence has actually brought the best out of Derek White. I think it's brought some of the best out of Marcus Smart. Obviously, this has been a down year for Smart defensively, but he's been more balanced. There's been less no, yes shots, but there's also been less how the hell did he make that play on defense? It's just been a more balanced version of Marcus Smart. And to be honest with you, through the regular season, with Smart being your lead point guard, I think you go with that balance more than the swings. And then you kind of ride those swings in the postseason a little bit more because you've got Brogdon and White. But I do think that Brogdon's presence has kind of elevated those around him in the guard rotation. Obviously, Peyton Pritchard's going to have a completely different opinion to that. But sorry, Peyton.
Yeah.
But I do think that Brogdon, his presence has elevated the team in terms of not having something they didn't have last year. But I think he's also brought the best out of the guys around him because these 3 dudes are competing for minutes. Yeah. Derek White has all of a sudden dislodged randomly, like a guard. Derek White has basically dislodged Robert Williams because you can't go double big and not have Derek White in the starting 5. And I don't think Brogdon was ever going to be in contention for a starting role because that wear and tear on his body against a slightly better defensive lineup to start and close games. You don't want to put that on him because that's where the injury concerns come from, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that his impact has been greater than what I expected. I think even the people that were excited to get him didn't expect that level of consistency from him. Honestly, I think that him being on this roster, if they face the Warriors again, which is a big if because they might not even get past the Kings. I know they won yesterday and it's 2-1 now, but if it was to be a Boston Warriors finals, I don't see a way in which the Warriors repeat what they did last year because Brogdon just gives you too much.
Yeah, and a big part of this about him, to your point of him coming off the bench, that was always the plan. That was the plan from day one, is that he was going to be the 6th man. And I think the last point that I want to hit here before we take a break, Brad Stevens does not miss, baby.
He does not miss.
The man is en fuego. Now, I'm taking this from, I saw a tweet last night from Brian Barrett, who's the host of the Off the Pike podcast over on The Ringer. Here's just a quick list of what Brad Stevens has brought in and what's gone out. So incoming, we have Al Horford, Derek White, and your sixth man of the year, Malcolm Brogdon. Here's what's gone out. A 2023 first rounder coming up this season, Malik Fitz, Nick Stauskas, Daniel Tice, Juwan Morgan, Aaron Neesmith, Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson, a 2022 first rounder that turned into Blake Wesley, Kemba Walker, a 2021 first rounder that turned into Alperen Sengun, and there's a 2025 second rounder that hasn't come to fruition yet. Think about that list and think about the impact of Al Horford, Derek White, and Malcolm Brogdon, two of which already helped you get to a finals and nearly win a finals against an all-time dynasty team in the Warriors. And now you're adding the two of them, one of which Derek White is having maybe the best season of, which is funny in all this with Malcolm Brogdon winning the Sixth Man of the Year award. You know, Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year last year. Derek White right now, you'd have to say, is the best out of the three of them. You know, Derek White has been that special this season and in this playoff run. You add Brogdon. This is just, you know, he's only 2 years into the job. Remember that Brad Stevens is only 2 years into this job. And these are the returns that he's gotten. And I think he just needs a massive tip of the cap for the work that he's done.
Yeah, I mean, look, Alperen Sengun's good. I like Alperen Sengun. I think he's got a good high ceiling. I'm not choosing him over Al Horford for a team that's contending right now.
For right now, he's not the answer.
Yeah, for not right now. You lose Kemba Walker. According to Enes Kanter, Kemba Walker was cooked at this point. And, you know, you're not choosing Kemba over Derek White at this point in time. It's just not happening. Mm-hmm. Everybody else and a couple of draft picks, whatever. I think that one thing I do want to mention is, yeah, okay, so Derek White's probably the best out of the three guards right now. Smart's a defensive player of the year last season. Brogdon's a sixth man of the year this season. There's a very good chance Derek White ends the year as an all-NBA defensive player.
Yeah.
You know, just an all-NBA defensive team. Obviously, I know DPOY has already gone to Jaren Jackson. Mm-hmm. But at which point then, you've got two guards. One was a 2022 defensive player of the year. One's a 2023 all defense. And then you've got a sixth man of the year in your third guard. And
It's a hell of a backcourt, man.
Yeah, and then you've got an Al Horford that literally revamped his game in one off season and become one of the best 3-point shooters, period, in the NBA for the entire year. The dude don't miss. He does not miss.
Pass Brad Stevens the rock. He does not miss. The man is lighting it up, deserves all the flowers. Just an incredible run of moves that are put together this Celtics roster. We're going to take a quick break and we come back. Let's talk a little bit, Adam, about what's happened in this series and what you've been seeing through your eyes. All right, Adam. So Celtics are up 2-0 heading into Atlanta for game 3 tonight as of this recording here. You know, I'm curious. I know you've put out a couple of breakdowns of, you know, different plays from these first two games. Schematically, what are you seeing that's made the Celtics so successful and so dominant in these first two games?
Okay, I think the first thing, let's be honest, is the fact that Atlanta are absolutely awful on defense.
That helps.
Yeah, I mean, it helps a lot, right? I don't see a wing defender that's containing Jason or Jalen on their rotation. You know, DeAndre Hunter might be the guy that believes he can do that, but it's not really there. DeJounte Murray can only guard one guard. You know what I mean? He's like, I just don't think they have the defense there. But what I have noticed is the Celtics are running a lot of wing action. So a lot of stagger screens, a lot of pin downs. And they've done that through the season, but it feels like it's a big focus point right now is run actions on the wing to get switches and then all of a sudden attack middle. And if you watch that Hawks game back in the third quarter, you hear the Hawks shouting no middle, which is a defensive system that means don't let the dude go middle. Don't let him get into the center of the court. It's very simple. It's very hard to do when you don't have good screen navigators, when you don't have much length. When the Celtics in game 2, they didn't do so much in game 1, but in game 2, they relentlessly just took advantage of every mismatch. Trae Young was getting smoked. There's a lot there, right? I think that what they're doing on the wings at the moment with their screening actions, there was a play in the second game, and it was just so harsh on Trae Young because he didn't see it coming. And I don't know if I've tweeted this out or not. It might be on my Instagram. If it's not, it will be later today. But there was a play where it was like Jason Tatum's on the ball. I think it's Tatum. Al Horford sets a screen. Tatum comes over the screen, I think it's Clint Capella gets switched onto him on the wing. As Clint Capella switches onto him, Smart is all the way down on like the low post, on the strong side, but is on the low post. And who's trying to guard Smart? But Trae Young. As soon as that switch happens, so Tatum hasn't even come off that screen properly from Horford yet. As soon as it happens, Smart just sprints into Capella, sets a back screen. All of a sudden, Trae Young's like, where the hell's Marcus Smart gone? I'm on the low block. Jason Tatum's like, boom, I got Trae Young straight to the bucket, finished with a left-handed shot. And it was so quick, and Young just didn't read what was happening around him, that he just got left on an island, and Tatum got an easy bucket, right? And I think that's been a big, big focus point as well, is like, because we can punish these guys, because they're struggling to deal with the screening actions that we're throwing at them, maybe we just pressure the rim more.
Yeah.
Maybe we just get downhill a bit more. And there's been, I'd say, I think on the season, I'd have to check this, but it was around about 26% of Boston's offense came at the rim. In game 2, 33 or 34% came at the rim. That's a significant jump when you're talking about total shot attempt.
They've got 98 shots inside the paint. 98 in 2 games.
In 2 games.
Shots.
Probably took them about 6 months to get there in the regular season.
It definitely feels, and this was, I think, one of our worries coming into the postseason is, hey, when you see this advantage, I know we're a 3-point shooting team. That's where we've kind of cut our teeth this season. We get it. That's part of quote unquote Missoula ball. But with the opportunities there, are we going to strike? And, we already touched on this in the first segment about how Brogdon and Rob really switched in that, in that first second half of the first quarter in game 2, how they switched up kind of the momentum of that game, because Atlanta did come out a little bit feisty. They got a little bit hot from 3-point range. And I really thought about just the easy buckets they got with Rob Williams at the end of that first quarter, the second half of that first quarter. He got 3 easy buckets, getting Bogdanovich or getting whoever it might be kind of pinned down and just getting a nice easy lob. Really easy buckets it took him until I think the third quarter to miss his first shot of the series. Never mind the game, his first shot of the series, because the Celtics are looking for him and getting those easy buckets. Now, one thing I want to touch on, because you talked about kind of hunting Trae Young, right, on the offensive end for the Celtics, and that's not necessarily just the way that they've been trying to target Sam Hauser, which, newsflash, is not really working out all that well. Shout out to Sam Hauser, who's been playing some really nice defense in his little bit of time he's been on the court. But it's hunting Trae Young, not just on ball, but off ball, right? Finding ways to put him into actions that allow for mismatches on other parts of the court. So what I'm curious to know, if you've seen anything, and Greg and I have talked about this without digging in probably as much as you have to the actual tape after the games. We've been doing it kind of live or in the reaction, is that anytime it feels like the Hawks have a chance, it's usually when Trae Young is on the bench. So when Trae Young is off, it feels like it's a little bit harder. It gives at least the Hawks a better balance. We just talked about this consistency balance that Marcus Smart is having. I think for the Hawks, their team is a lot more balanced when they actually have Trae Young off the court. Have you seen anything in your rewatches or your film, Adam, that indicates that to be true, that when Trae Young does sit, it feels like the Hawks actually do have a better chance?
Yeah, how can I put this? I was just pulling up the numbers. I haven't got them up at the moment, but it does feel that way, right? You put DeJounte Murray at your point of attack, but you're not hiding somebody. So now it feels like there's 5 legitimate defenders on the floor. Not high-level defenders, but NBA-level defenders.
But even just size and people who give a shit, quite frankly. You know what I mean? Like Trae Young is just kind of uninterested at times in defending until the ball finds his way kind of near him. And he's like, oh, crap, I'll contest. But he's also then 6 feet, and it's not going to make a difference to an NBA player.
I genuinely believe Trae Young is one of the worst defensive players in the league. I don't think that's an egregious statement. I do think that, as you say, when Trae Young's not on the floor, they look a little bit more stern, robust might be the word defensively. They're forcing more live ball turnovers. They're fighting for their rebounds a bit more because there's no one having to worry about where Trae Young is and if Trae Young is getting beat off ball. Is he getting back cut? Is he getting face cut? Are they running a screening action to try and get Trae Young onto someone who's about to receive? You don't have to worry about none of that shit because Trae's not there. And I'm just going to put up the numbers in a moment because I am interested to see what the on-off is. I know it's only a 2-game sample size and that's a bit of a flawed metric, but I definitely want to see. But yeah, I think there's a very notable difference in how well Atlanta have played on both sides of the floor without Trae there. And I do genuinely believe defense generates good offense. And without Trae there, you're playing good defense. So obviously your offense is going to receive that boost that comes with that.
Yeah, and with Atlanta, there hasn't been a time where I said this especially after game one, where, the Celtics were up by 30 and then the Hawks cut it to 12 twice. And just because they cut it down to 12, it felt like the game got a little bit closer than it ever actually truly got. When you go back and do a rewatch, that game was never really in question. But there was, and there have been over these first two games, a few runs that have been led by those trayless lineups in which it feels like, hey, if the Hawks had this consistently and they were running more stuff through DeJounte versus Trae Young, there might be something here. There might be something. And this is going to be, I think, a lingering question in the offseason for sure for the Atlanta Hawks. They have a giant Trae Young question, and it becomes, maybe is it time to sell? Do they give another year to try to work it out with Quinn Snyder? We'll have to see, what that looks like for them. But in the series, it does feel like if they're going to have any chance to get back into it, that's going to be, the way that they have to play. Adam, I know you're still looking up those numbers here. You got those for us?
Yeah, basically, it's on cleaning the glass, so it's a nightmare to kind of get your head around. And I'm just trying to do it for the playoffs. Okay, so
I'm excited for these results now.
Okay, so the rows show the difference in how a team performs with the player on versus off the court for each of the stats. The blue numbers show the player's percentile rank. Okay, so at the moment, Trae Young is a minus 25.5.
Mm-hmm. When he's on the court.
Yeah. So they're 25.5 points worse off with Trae Young on the court than off. They're giving up 30 points, 30.9 points extra with Trae off the floor than when he's on. Now, let's be fair. Trae is on the floor for the majority of the game. Yeah. He's played 105 minutes over 2 games. Is that right? That sounds a lot.
How many minutes did you say he's played?
105.
That's not right. Yeah, no, he's only averaging 34 minutes per game here. But
yeah, I don't know what cleaning the glass is doing here.
Well, that's okay. But I think it makes the point. Either way, what we're trying to say is that he probably needs to play less. I mean, he is playing less right now than DeJounte Murray. So right now, DeJounte Murray has been averaging about 38 minutes per game. Trae Young's at 34.3. He's actually just barely above DeAndre Hunter. Yeah. So I mean, you can see that. We're not crazy. Quinn Snyder sees it too. He's playing the quote unquote star player of his team less because they are having more success in that, in that area with him off the court. So I think your point stands, even if we don't have the exact figures.
I think the numbers include like the amount of minutes on. I don't know that the numbers are crazy, but yeah, basically defensively he's awful, and the team is much better when DeJounte Murray is on the floor and Trae Young is not on the floor. I think that's where we're getting at. And I think that goes a lot towards as well. They play smaller a lot of the time, even with Trae off the floor. Atlanta are quite a small team in general. And it makes life difficult for the Celtics because they have to match that pace, right? I mean, you can do it with Trae on the floor too, but obviously the defense isn't there. But now you're forcing the Celtics to have to play at a certain speed that may be an octave or 2 octaves above a couple of notches above what the Celtics want to operate at. And, you've seen it when the Celtics try and play faster than where they're comfortable. Turnovers happen,
sloppy, right?
Yeah, turnovers happen.
Exactly.
Bad, like they start smoking layups. They start driving into guys that are pinching in from the wings, and it's easy to poke the ball loose. But even doing that, playing that way, that brand of basketball for Atlanta isn't sustainable because they don't have enough depth on their bench to be able to be like, right, we're subbing out DeAndre Hunter. Oh shit, who can we put in? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then it's John Collins, and now Collins has got to move to.
Which, by the way, let's talk about John Collins here just for a second. I mean, he's been a complete non-factor in this series for all the talk over the last feels 2-3 years now of his trade value and him being on the market and what the Hawks want. And at one point before the Celtics turned it around a year ago, they were certainly rumored in the John Collins mix. Would it even be Marcus Smart for John Collins, or whatever the different rumors were, and thank God that wasn't the case. And I've never been a huge John Collins guy. I have nothing wrong with John Collins. I just don't get the hype on John Collins. And I look at a series like this where we know that this is not a good matchup, but he's just such a complete non-factor. It's part of the reason for me I could never imagine making a serious investment, whether it's with trade assets or 20 plus, 20, $25 million, whatever his contract ended up being that he got. Why I never really seen that vision of him being that type of guy.
See, so I will argue that the team he's on and the pieces around him don't complement or accentuate what he does well. It's very much that he's put in a position to fail rather than being put in a position to succeed. John Collins is a pick and pop threat, as a perimeter screener, as a secondary or tertiary rebounding threat. Fine. I think he can be a really, really good player for you in that role when he's surrounded by good wing defenders that are going to keep Collins from having to be like a last line of defense type of guy, right? When you've got good help defense, when you've got good perimeter defense, Collins can thrive. There isn't any of that for Atlanta, and they don't run. The thing with Atlanta is, and this was more under, what was his name? Who's the coach they fired? It's gone out of my head now.
It was guy. I just thought about this. Was it Lloyd Pierce? No, it wasn't Lloyd Pierce. That was
No,
before. It was Lloyd Pierce, and then it went to Nate McMillan. Nate
McMillan. There we go.
Yeah.
And this was more of a factor under Nate McMillan, but a lot of what Atlanta were running under McMillan was guard to guard actions. They didn't. It was basically Murray gets a turn to initiate and score. Trae Young gets a turn to initiate and score. And then if anybody else gets a chance to score, great, but it's because one of the other two guys got shut down, right? Quinn Snyder's trying to change that, but he's only been in charge like 27, 28 games at this point.
It's tough to do.
Yeah, it's really tough to do. And Collins just isn't featured in any way, shape, or form to make an impact. So when he gets a chance to shoot a free, he's not in great rhythm. His feet aren't set. So I'm not probably as out on him as what some people are, but I also do think he's overhyped. And I think that he's completely underutilized as well. So yeah, he's been a non-factor. And I know, just to point this out, someone said to me the other day on socials, they were like, oh, well, John Collins' presence is a perfect reason to play Grant Williams in this series. I just want to point out that the Celtics aren't playing man-to-man defense. You might put Grant Williams on John Collins, but he's not going to stay there. He's going to have to guard the DeAndre Hunter, the DeJounte Murray, and he's going to get smoked because that's not his defensive matchup. So I understand why Grant's not playing. I have my thoughts on that, and I'm kind of not 100% down with him not playing because you're about to throw him into a series against Philly, having not played in 2 or 3 weeks, and be like, go and guard Embiid. And the dude's going to be like, dude, I'm out of rhythm. I can't guard that monster. It's going to take me 3 or 4 games to get my feeling back. So
yeah, it's definitely potentially a catch-22.
Yeah,
let's save that topic because I do think that's one that we should dive into at a different point. But for right now, let's take one last final break. We'll come back and let's talk about Game 3 specifically. All right, Adam. Game 3 tonight in Atlanta. What is the number one factor that will drive the Celtics going up 3-0 by the end of tonight?
Number one factor, more rim pressure. I think that the Celtics have a chance to, or there is a chance that the Celtics struggle to convert their 3-point shots in a hostile environment in Atlanta. I think that by pressuring the rim early, you're going to be able to kind of silence the crowd. You need to take that crowd out of the equation quickly. Now, the last 2 games, you've managed to run up some leads in the early, like midway through the first, early in the second. You've ran up a lead. The Celtics crowd has got into it. You need to do the same now, but for the opposite reason. You need to shut whoever is in Atlanta Stadium up. Keep them quiet all the way through, and then, you can go to your freeze. I also think that Jaylen Brown is due a big night playing in front of a hometown crowd.
That was actually be my number one thing is I want to see what, and of course we're on kind of Jaylen Brown hand watch, right? We talked about it last game. I think his first shot, immediately the announcers talked about him starting to flex. Then in the second half, he has that dunk to start the half. Same thing. It feels like those stitches are in a tricky place. And we talked about the turnovers. He's been the number one culprit when it comes to some of the turnovers here. He's averaging 5 turnovers a game just in these first 2. And some of those are decisions. Some of those feel like maybe it's the hand, maybe it's a little bit of the ball handling is affected by that, or maybe just mentally he's thinking about that. But like you said, him coming into his hometown, I think this is going to be a game where Jaylen Brown, really wants to make a statement. And we've seen a lot of these hot first quarter Jaylen Brown moments where he comes out and has, 14 points in the first 8 minutes of a game. that's something that I'm expecting tonight. So I don't know if you can bet on an over-under for the first quarter for Jaylen Brown, but depending on what that line is, I'd probably look to take the over. I think Jaylen Brown is going to try to make a statement, but I think your first point of continuing to get downhill, I mean, we said this coming into the series, and it's proved very true. The spacing the Celtics have, even Clint Capella said it. He's like, I got to guard Al Horford. I can't leave Al Horford. He shot 45% from 3 on the year. Like, I can't go protect the rim for my teammates the way that I normally would because of the way Boston is spaced out. And the way they're spaced out, specifically, Derek White and Jason Tatum are just living at the rim. Talked about Derek White last game, was 9 of 11 inside the paint. 9 of 11. Just getting downhill time after time, a lot of time picking on Trae Young while that's happening. And then you throw in guys like Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, they can also get downhill. Robert Williams has been a little bit more assertive in getting his post position, getting into the dunker spot, being available for those dump offs. So I think living at the rim, like you said, is going to be key. And then on the defensive end, I really think for the Hawks, it kind of needs to. We talked about Trae Young not playing, but Trae Young getting hot or DeJounte Murray getting hot. Like, they're going to need some combo or, something from one of the two of them where they have an out-of-body experience. I really think that's what it's going to take for them to get a win in the series, is that probably both of them at the same time are going to have to hit some type of streak where they're both hovering around the 30-point mark and they're hitting, they're being efficient with the shots that they're making as well.
Yeah, it's going to be like Super Saiyan Fusion, right? You're going to need Gotenks and Trunks to
whatever that means, but yes.
Yes, people that like Dragon Ball Z will know exactly what I'm talking about. Even then, right. So Trae Young goes off. Trae Young drops 50. Murray drops 25. So that's 75 points, right?
Which is a lot. Which is a lot to ask. Yeah.
Where's the rest of their points coming from? Capella hasn't really been a big factor. We've just said John Collins hasn't been a big factor. DeAndre Hunter might get you 11, maybe 12. Like,
he's another one because he's going to get the shots, right? We're going to be okay with DeAndre Hunter getting the shots. Bogdanovich, I think, in this series, I think he probably actually needs to even play a little bit more. I think
he's actually been probably one of the biggest offensive threats.
Exactly. So I think that's the answer as to where else it comes from. And then DeAndre Hunter was going to have a game where he gets hot. I mean, he started off last game, I think, either 3 of 3 or 4 of 4, and then finished with, I think, 5 total field goals made out of 15 shots or whatever it was. So DeAndre Hunter's a guy that you're just gonna, he's gonna have to fill that, that Lou Dort type of role where we're gonna live and die with this guy shooting, because and if he makes 7 out of 10 threes, good for him. We're banking you're not doing that 4 times in a series. And even if you do, I think we still might be able to beat you, is what the Celtics are saying.
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to come down to rebounding as well. I think this series was always going to be whoever controls the glass controls their own fate. And I think that a lot of it was blown out of proportion when Capella had that big night against Miami.
Yeah, right? Miami has no size. They have Bam, and then can you name me there? I mean, it's him and Cody Zeller for 5 minutes.
Or maybe Omar Yurtseven if he's healthy.
I mean, he doesn't even he hasn't cracked the rotation yet. At least in these meaningful games.
Not in the meaningful games. I don't think, but I think that the glass controlling the glass is going to be big, especially away from home, where those type of plays really invigorate a team. They invigorate the crowd. Making sure you don't get a DeAndre Hunter putback or a big time second possession when you're down, when the team's trailing by 5, and you're really breathing life back into them. You're breathing hope back into them. If you control the glass, do exactly what you've done games 1 and 2. Maybe make the odd tweak. Maybe you don't have Horford in drop as much. Maybe you switch 1 through 5. Maybe you go a little bit of zone just to kind of keep things fresh and keep them guessing. Great, you're going to have some success. But overall, I don't think the Celtics need to change much because the Hawks can't stop them now.
Yeah.
So how are they going to stop them? You make alterations to keep things fresh, but you also make them to find ways to attack an opponent. Well, you don't need to, because this team cannot stop you.
Yeah, they don't have the ability to really make the alterations necessary to make a difference. So Adam, let me ask you this here before we wrap up, just in case, because we know the second game. So game 3 is tonight. Game 4 will be Sunday night. So I'm sure Greg and I will have a reaction pod right after that game. We'll know what would have happened, and maybe the Celtics have wrapped up the series at that point. We'll see. But in case we don't see you, just because so it's a little early in the morning your time there to hop on that particular podcast. Give us your prediction for the weekend, not just game 3. Give us your prediction for the weekend. By the next time you're on this podcast, are we preparing for round 2, or are we still talking about the Hawks?
Get the brooms, baby.
Let's go.
Get those brooms, dude. I'm waking up Monday morning knowing it's been a sweep. I'll be chilling and watching a lot of Sixers footage. No, I won't, because the Sixers are a hard watch. But I'll watch a little bit of Sixers footage.
Yeah, man. They're up 3-0 on Brooklyn. Looks like they're gonna put them away. Embiid last night, man, went down about 2-3 different times where, I really hope Brooklyn squeaks out a win in that series, because the more we get a banged up Embiid, the better I like our chances. And I like our chances already. And so the more you get a banged up Embiid, the better it looks for Boston. Everything's coming up Celtics right now. Get the Hawks. Embiid's already looking beaten up. It's looking like a nice path that we got here, Adam. But that's going to do it for this episode of Green with Envy. Make sure that y'all enjoy the game tonight. Greg and I will be back after game 4. Maybe we'll have something else in the mix. I don't know. Stay tuned. We don't know. There's so many things that are happening with this team. We might be back with more. We might have a bonus podcast. So make sure that you are subscribed to the feed. Make sure you're following us on YouTube. We're uploading all of these videos onto our YouTube channel. Make sure you're hitting us up on the IG at Adam Taylor NBA, at Green MV Pod. Make sure you are following us. Adam, any final thoughts here before we send this to the Black Sheep Optimists?
Sunday, Jason Tatum 50-piece to close the series.
Boom. Mic drop. We're out of here. Peace, y'all. Enjoy the games tonight.